There are people in Hollywood who became famous, and then there's Keanu Reeves, a man loved by millions, respected by almost everyone, and somehow still carrying a sadness most people never fully notice. When fans see him smiling in public, giving away his seat on the subway, or quietly helping strangers without cameras around, it feels real. Because it is real. But behind that calm voice and humble personality is a life filled with loss, loneliness, and painful moments that could have broken almost anyone. And maybe that's why people connect with him so deeply. Not because he pretends to be perfect, but because he stayed kind after life gave him every reason not to. This isn't a story about scandals or fake drama. This is the real story of Keanu Reeves, the quiet pain, the private battles, and the heartbreaking truth behind one of Hollywood's most loved actors. Keanu Reeves was born on September 2nd, 1964 in Beirut, Lebanon. Even from the very beginning, his life never felt stable. His mother, Patricia Taylor, worked as a costume designer and performer, while his father, Samuel Nolan Reeves Jr., struggled with serious personal problems for years. Keanu's parents separated when he was still very young, and eventually his father disappeared from his life almost completely. In later interviews, Keanu rarely spoke deeply about that pain, but the absence of a father during childhood clearly left a mark on him. After moving between different countries as a child, Keanu eventually grew up in Toronto, Canada. His family moved constantly, and stability was something he almost never experienced. Different schools, different homes, different people coming in and out of his life. For many children, that kind of unstable environment creates anger or rebellion. But Keanu became quieter instead. Teachers and classmates often described him as shy, polite, and distant at times. School itself was difficult for him. He struggled with dyslexia, which made learning harder than it was for many other students. According to reports and past interviews, he attended several different high schools and never fully felt like he belonged anywhere. While other kids seemed confident about their future, Keanu often felt disconnected. But one thing gave him purpose: hockey. For a while, hockey became everything to him. He was talented too. In school, he played as a goalie and earned the nickname The Wall because of how difficult he was to score against. Keanu once spoke about how seriously he took the sport during his teenage years. He dreamed of becoming a professional hockey player, and for the first time in his life, he had something stable to hold on to. But life changed again. A serious injury destroyed those hockey dreams before they could fully happen. Suddenly, the one future he imagined for himself disappeared. Many people would have completely lost direction after something like that. And honestly, Keanu did struggle, but slowly, acting entered his life almost by accident. He started appearing in small theater productions and local television work in Canada. At first, acting wasn't about becoming rich or famous. It was simply something that allowed him to express emotions he usually kept hidden. Friends from that time described him as someone deeply thoughtful, always observing people quietly rather than demanding attention. Eventually, Hollywood noticed him. In the late 1980s, Keanu started getting bigger roles in films. One of the movies that helped introduce him to mainstream audiences was Bill and Ted's Excellent Adventure. The film became popular because of its strange humor and lovable energy. Keanu's performance as Ted made audiences instantly recognize him. But even during that success, people inside Hollywood often underestimated him. Critics sometimes mocked his quiet delivery and reserved personality. There were unfair jokes claiming he lacked emotional depth as an actor. For many celebrities, criticism leads to bitterness or arrogance. But Keanu almost never publicly attacked anyone back. Instead, he kept working, and behind the scenes, he was still dealing with emotional wounds most people around him never saw. In multiple interviews throughout the years, Keanu admitted he often felt like an outsider in Hollywood. He wasn't interested in becoming the loudest celebrity in the room. He avoided the party lifestyle many actors embraced during the late 80s and early 90s. While others chased fame aggressively, Keanu seemed uncomfortable with attention itself. Then came Speed in 1994. The movie became a massive success and changed his career forever. Suddenly, Keanu Reeves was no longer just the quiet actor from comedy films. He became an action star overnight. Audiences loved his chemistry with Sandra Bullock, and the film earned huge success worldwide. But what many fans respected later was a decision Keanu made after the film. When Speed 2 was being planned, studio executives reportedly offered him an enormous amount of money to return. According to multiple reports over the years, the offer was around $11 million, which was massive at the time, but Keanu refused because he didn't believe in the script. Hollywood rarely sees actors walk away from that kind of money, especially during the peak of their fame, but Keanu cared more about honesty toward the audience than easy paychecks. Instead of chasing another blockbuster immediately, he chose smaller projects and even returned to theater performances. That decision confused many executives. Some people in Hollywood thought he was ruining his career intentionally, but Keanu never seemed obsessed with maintaining superstar status. He simply wanted meaningful work. Then, in 1999, everything changed again. The Matrix arrived. When audiences first saw Neo dodging bullets in slow motion, cinema itself felt different. The film became one of the most influential science fiction movies ever made, and Keanu Reeves became one of the biggest stars on Earth almost instantly. But behind the scenes, something important happened that says a lot about who Keanu really is. According to crew members and industry reports, Keanu gave away a huge portion of his earnings from the Matrix sequels to special effects artists and costume departments because he believed they deserved more recognition. While exact numbers reported by media outlets vary, the story itself became famous because it matched the reputation people already had of him: generous, humble, and deeply respectful toward others behind the camera. There are also well-known stories from the Matrix production where Keanu bought motorcycles and gifts for stunt performers to thank them personally for the dangerous work they did. These stories spread not because Keanu bragged about them, but because other people witnessed them quietly happening. That's one reason fans trust him. His kindness almost never feels performative. But during the same period when his career was reaching incredible heights, his personal life was quietly collapsing. In the late 1990s, Keanu met actress and assistant Jennifer Syme. People close to them described their relationship as deeply loving and private. For Keanu, who spent most of his life feeling emotionally guarded, Jennifer became someone he truly connected with. Then came heartbreaking news. In 1999, the couple was expecting a baby daughter. They planned to name her Ava Archer Syme Reeves. But tragedy struck when the baby was stillborn at 8 months. The loss devastated both of them. Multiple reports and interviews from people close to the couple described how painful that period became. Grief changed everything in their relationship. Despite loving each other deeply, the emotional weight became overwhelming, and eventually they separated. And then something even more tragic happened. In April 2001, Jennifer Syme died in a car accident in Los Angeles. She was only 28 years old. For Keanu, the pain became almost impossible to imagine. First losing his child, then losing the woman he loved only a short time later. People who worked with him during that era later described him as emotionally shattered, but still trying to remain gentle toward others. Years later, during interviews, Keanu spoke carefully about grief. One of his most emotional quotes came during an interview when he said, "Grief changes shape, but it never ends." That line stayed with many fans because it didn't sound rehearsed. It sounded like someone speaking from real experience. And honestly, that's what separates Keanu from many celebrities. Audiences feel that his sadness is real because he never turns it into performance or publicity. After Jennifer's death, Keanu became even more private. Tabloids constantly tried creating stories around him, especially because people noticed he spent a lot of time alone in public. Photographs of Keanu sitting quietly on park benches or eating alone became internet memes years later. But many fans eventually realized something important. Those photos weren't showing arrogance or depression for attention. They were showing a human being carrying grief, quietly. There's one famous interview clip where Keanu was asked what happens when we die. After pausing emotionally, he answered, "I know that the ones who love us will miss us." That response spread across the internet because people immediately felt the honesty behind it. It wasn't philosophical performance. It sounded like someone who personally understood loss. Another painful chapter in Keanu's life involved his closest friend, River Phoenix. Before either actor reached their full fame, Keanu and River became very close during the filming of My Own Private Idaho. River Phoenix was considered one of the most talented young actors of his generation, and Keanu admired him deeply. In 1993, River died from a drug overdose outside the Viper Room nightclub in Hollywood. Keanu was devastated. People often forget how many losses Keanu experienced across different periods of his life. losing his father emotionally during childhood, losing close friends, losing his daughter, losing Jennifer. Again and again, life seemed to take people away from him. And yet, he never became cruel. That's the part many fans admire most, because pain changes people. Sometimes it hardens them, sometimes it makes them selfish. But with Keanu, suffering seemed to make him more compassionate toward others. Throughout the 2000s and 2010s, story after story appeared about quiet acts of kindness he never publicized himself. Airline delays where he calmly helped strangers, movie set workers describing how respectfully he treated everyone regardless of status. Reports about him helping crew members financially during difficult situations. One famous story involved Keanu reportedly giving up his seat on crowded public transportation without anyone asking. Another described him patiently talking with homeless individuals in New York rather than ignoring them like invisible people. Whether every internet story became exaggerated over time or not, the consistent pattern mattered. People who actually met Keanu almost always described the same qualities: humble, respectful, calm, and thoughtful. That reputation became even stronger during the John Wick era. When the first John Wick film released in 2014, few expected it to become such a massive franchise. Keanu was already respected, but some people in Hollywood quietly believed his biggest career years were behind him. Then John Wick shocked everyone. Audiences loved the emotional depth behind the action. Beneath all the violence and stylish fight scenes was actually a story about grief, loneliness, and love lost forever. And honestly, many fans believe Keanu connected so strongly to John Wick because parts of that emotional pain felt personally familiar to him. The role revived his career completely, but even during renewed fame, Keanu remained unusually grounded compared to most major celebrities. He still rode motorcycles through regular streets. He still avoided showing off wealth constantly online. He still gave interviews where he seemed more interested in discussing philosophy, art, or human emotions than fame itself. There's also something important many fans respect deeply about Keanu. He rarely uses personal tragedy to gain sympathy publicly. In modern celebrity culture, many people turn every emotional moment into headlines or marketing. But Keanu almost always protects his private pain carefully. When he discusses grief, he speaks thoughtfully and briefly, never dramatically, never manipulatively. That restraint makes people trust him more. Because audiences can sense authenticity, in a world where fame often feels artificial, Keanu Reeves feels human. Even his co-workers consistently describe him in surprisingly emotional ways. Actor Lawrence Fishburne, who worked with Keanu on the Matrix films, has spoken positively about his generosity and professionalism. Sandra Bullock once revealed in interviews that Keanu quietly performed kind gestures during filming years earlier without expecting praise for them. During one interview on The Ellen DeGeneres Show, Sandra shared a story about mentioning she had never tasted champagne and truffles before while filming Speed. Shortly afterward, Keanu reportedly arrived with champagne and truffles for her simply because he remembered the conversation. Small details like that matter. Kindness often reveals itself through attention. And Keanu seems to genuinely pay attention to people around him because they notice something sad beneath his calm image. Despite global fame and enormous success, Keanu often carried visible loneliness. Not dramatic loneliness like movies portray, but quiet loneliness. The kind that sits silently behind someone's eyes even when they smile. Some fans believe that's why internet culture embraced him so strongly in recent years. People don't just admire Keanu Reeves because he's famous. They admire him because he represents something rare. A person who suffered deeply without losing empathy. That doesn't mean his life is purely tragic, and Keanu himself would probably dislike being portrayed only as a sad figure. Throughout interviews, he has shown humor, curiosity, and genuine passion for life too. He loves motorcycles, he enjoys music, he has spoken about poetry, creativity, and storytelling with real excitement. And importantly, over recent years, fans became happy seeing him appear more emotionally open again. His relationship with artist Alexandra Grant attracted attention partly because people were genuinely relieved to see Keanu smiling differently. Not fake celebrity smiles for cameras, but softer, more peaceful moments. They reportedly met through creative collaborations before becoming romantically involved, and fans appreciated how natural their connection appeared. There was no loud Hollywood performance around it, no desperate attention-seeking, just two adults quietly supporting each other. For longtime fans who watched Keanu endure decades of loss, those moments mattered emotionally because sometimes audiences become attached not just to celebrities, but to their humanity, and Keanu's humanity is impossible to ignore. Even today, after decades inside one of the harshest industries in the world, people still struggle to find serious scandals connected to him. That alone is rare in Hollywood, especially for someone who reached his level of fame. Instead, the stories surrounding Keanu usually involve respect. Respect from coworkers, respect from stunt teams, respect from ordinary people who randomly met him for a few minutes and walked away feeling surprised by how normal and kind he seemed. That doesn't happen by accident. You can fake public image for short periods, but maintaining the same reputation across decades, across hundreds of coworkers, across countless random encounters, that usually means something is genuine. And maybe that's the real emotional truth about Keanu Reeves. Not that he suffered. Many people suffer. Not that he became famous. Many celebrities become famous. The reason his story affects people emotionally is because he continued choosing kindness after pain entered his life again and again. That choice is harder than most people realize, because grief changes people, loneliness changes people. Yet somehow Keanu Reeves still became known not for cruelty, but for compassion. And maybe that's why millions of fans around the world continue rooting for him so strongly today. Even with all the admiration Keanu Reeves receives today, there's still a strange sadness connected to the way the world sees him, because many people only discovered how much pain he carried after turning him into internet memes first. Years ago, photos of Keanu sitting alone on benches, quietly drinking coffee, or staring into the distance spread everywhere online. People called it Sad Keanu. At first, many treated it like a joke, without understanding the real human being behind those images. But over time, something changed. Fans began looking deeper into his life story and realizing those quiet expressions came from someone who had genuinely experienced heartbreak most people would struggle to survive. And maybe that's one reason the internet slowly stopped laughing and started respecting him instead. Keanu never publicly complained about the jokes. He never attacked people online. He simply kept living his life quietly, the same way he always had. And that silence somehow made audiences admire him even more. In an industry where celebrities constantly try controlling every headline, Keanu often seems completely detached from Hollywood's obsession with image. He doesn't flood social media with luxury posts trying to prove his importance. He doesn't create fake controversy for attention. He doesn't force himself into every spotlight possible. In fact, many fans believe part of Keanu's mystery comes from how little he tries to manipulate public perception. He allows people to see him naturally, even during awkward or painful moments. That honesty is rare, and the deeper people looked into his story, the more emotional details they discovered. One thing that affected fans strongly was learning how much Keanu valued friendship and loyalty throughout his life. People close to him often describe him as deeply committed to the people he cares about. After River Phoenix passed away in 1993, Keanu reportedly struggled emotionally for a long time. River wasn't just another actor to him. They shared creative respect and personal trust during an important period of their young careers. In old interviews surrounding My Own Private Idaho, you can actually feel the connection between them. River's death shocked Hollywood, but for Keanu, it became personal grief. And sadly, it wouldn't be the last time loss entered his life. One of the hardest truths about Keanu Reeves is that happiness in his life often seemed interrupted just when things appeared hopeful. After the heartbreaking loss of his daughter Ava and then Jennifer Syme, many reports suggested Keanu emotionally withdrew from parts of Hollywood society even more than before. He continued working professionally, but people around him noticed a quiet heaviness. Still, he refused to become self-destructive publicly. He kept showing up for work. He kept treating others respectfully, and maybe that's why so many coworkers remain loyal to him after decades. Actor and director interviews across different productions consistently described Keanu almost the same way: humble, hardworking, and unusually considerate. During the intense training for the John Wick films, stunt performers repeatedly praised how seriously Keanu respected their craft. Instead of acting superior because he was the star, he trained alongside teams for months, learning choreography carefully so scenes could look authentic. According to interviews from stunt coordinators involved with the franchise, Keanu spent extensive time mastering gun handling and movement techniques to avoid wasting the crew's effort during filming. That level of commitment created huge respect behind the scenes, and fans noticed another emotional layer connected to John Wick. Beneath all the action, the character itself represents grief. John Wick is a man emotionally destroyed by loss, trying to survive memories that never fully leave him. Many viewers felt Keanu brought unusual sincerity to that pain because parts of it seemed personally understood rather than simply acted. Some performances feel technical. Keanu's performance felt lived in. There's a scene in the first John Wick where his character quietly watches an old video of his late wife smiling. Very little dialogue happens, yet audiences felt the loneliness instantly. Moments like that reminded people that Keanu's greatest strength as an actor was never flashy performance or loud emotional speeches. It was presence, silence, the ability to communicate sadness without over-explaining it. And strangely, that mirrors his real personality too. Throughout his career, Keanu rarely gave dramatic interviews exposing every private wound for sympathy. Instead, small, honest moments revealed more than long speeches ever could. During a past interview with Parade magazine, Keanu spoke about grief in a deeply human way, saying, "People have a misconception that you can deal with it and say, it's gone and I'm better. They're wrong." That quote stayed with many fans because it felt painfully real. Grief doesn't disappear just because time passes. Sometimes people simply learn how to carry it differently, and Keanu seemed to understand that deeply. Another reason audiences emotionally connect with him is because his kindness doesn't appear selective. Many celebrities are polite when cameras exist nearby, but stories about Keanu often happen when no publicity benefits him at all. One widely shared story came from a film set worker who claimed Keanu quietly helped crew members financially after learning some were struggling. Another famous story involved him patiently waiting in the rain outside his own wrap party because security initially didn't recognize him. Instead of demanding special treatment, he reportedly waited calmly until someone noticed. Whether every internet detail is perfectly accurate or slightly exaggerated over time, the overall pattern surrounding Keanu remains incredibly consistent. People who meet him rarely describe arrogance. They describe patience, respect, calmness. There's also something emotionally powerful about how Keanu interacts with ordinary people. Videos of him speaking to fans often feel different from typical celebrity encounters. He listens carefully, he makes eye contact, he rarely rushes conversations unnecessarily, and perhaps that behavior comes from understanding what loneliness feels like himself. People who know pain sometimes recognize it more easily in others. Even during massive fame after The Matrix, Keanu still used public transportation regularly. There are multiple photos and videos of him riding subways or trains quietly beside ordinary commuters. In one viral video from New York City, Keanu gives his seat to a woman carrying a bag without making a scene about it. What made people emotional wasn't the act itself. Decent people do kind things every day. What mattered was how natural it looked. He wasn't performing goodness. He simply noticed someone needing help and reacted instinctively. That authenticity is becoming increasingly rare in celebrity culture. Another thing fans admire about Keanu is his relationship with material success. Despite earning enormous wealth from blockbuster films, he never built his public identity around luxury. Yes, he enjoys motorcycles and certain hobbies, but he doesn't constantly try projecting superiority through expensive lifestyles. According to long-circulating industry stories, Keanu even accepted pay cuts on some films so productions could afford additional respected actors. Reports connected to movies like The Devil's Advocate and The Replacements claimed he lowered his salary to help casting budgets. Again, Keanu himself rarely boasts about these things publicly. Other people reveal the stories later. And that matters because audiences today are extremely sensitive to fake humility. When kindness becomes branding, people usually notice. But with Keanu, many compassionate stories surfaced accidentally through co-workers, assistants, or random witnesses instead of carefully planned interviews. Over time, that created an almost legendary reputation around him. Younger generations online began calling him the internet's boyfriend or Hollywood's nicest guy. But underneath those affectionate jokes is genuine emotional respect. People see someone who remained soft-hearted after surviving emotional devastation. And honestly, that inspires many fans more than traditional celebrity success ever could, because strength isn't always loud. Sometimes real strength looks like continuing to stay gentle after life hurts you repeatedly. Keanu's story also resonates because he never pretends pain made him special or wiser than everyone else. When discussing sadness in interviews, he usually speaks simply, almost cautiously. There's no fake philosopher performance. No dramatic, look how deep I am energy. Just honesty. And sometimes honesty hits harder than perfectly written speeches. One interview moment that deeply affected fans came during his appearance on The Late Show with Stephen Colbert. Colbert asked him what he thought happens after death. After a quiet pause, Keanu answered, "I know that the ones who love us will miss us." The audience became silent instantly, not because the sentence was complicated, but because it felt emotionally true. You could hear decades of grief inside those few words. And again, Keanu didn't overperform the moment afterward. He simply let the truth exist quietly. Those are the kinds of moments that transformed public perception of him over the years. People stopped seeing Keanu Reeves only as an action star and started seeing him as a deeply human figure. Someone imperfect, wounded, thoughtful, and compassionate. Someone trying to navigate life the same way everyone else does, just under brighter lights. Even his approach to fame feels unusually mature. Many celebrities spend enormous energy fighting aging or desperately chasing relevance. Keanu, meanwhile, seems more focused on meaningful work and personal peace. When he returned for newer Matrix projects decades after the original films, fans noticed how naturally he embraced aging instead of pretending time never passed. His appearance changed, but audiences respected him more because of that honesty. And despite carrying visible sadness sometimes, Keanu still clearly loves creativity. He speaks passionately about filmmaking, storytelling, motorcycles, and music. For years, he played bass guitar in the band Dogstar, not because he needed extra fame, but because he genuinely enjoyed music. In interviews surrounding Dogstar reunions, Keanu appeared genuinely excited, like someone reconnecting with a meaningful part of himself rather than chasing headlines. That emotional sincerity continues appearing throughout different areas of his life. Another detail many fans appreciate is how respectful Keanu remains toward women throughout his public interactions. Online discussions frequently point out how careful he appears about personal boundaries during photographs or events. People noticed his habit of posing without placing hands directly on women's bodies during fan pictures, a small gesture many interpreted as respectful awareness. Whether intentional or instinctive, fans appreciated the consideration behind it. And perhaps those details matter because modern audiences are exhausted by celebrity ego. Keanu represents something calmer, a reminder that fame doesn't automatically require arrogance, that masculinity doesn't require cruelty, that strength and kindness can exist. Of course, Keanu Reeves is still human like anyone else. No celebrity should be turned into a flawless myth. And honestly, part of respecting him means understanding that he probably wouldn't want worship either. He has flaws, regrets, insecurities, and difficult days like every person alive. But what makes his story emotional isn't perfection. It's endurance. The fact that despite losing so much, he never became publicly hateful toward the world, there's a quiet resilience inside him that fans deeply admire. Even small moments reveal it. During interviews, Keanu often laughs shyly or pauses before answering personal questions, as if carefully deciding how much emotion to reveal. You can sense someone who values privacy because pain taught him how fragile happiness can feel, and yet he still chooses openness sometimes. He still smiles with fans, still supports coworkers, still creates art, still keeps moving forward. That balance between sadness and hope may be the real reason Keanu Reeves means so much to people emotionally. Because life isn't purely tragic or purely joyful. Most people live somewhere between those emotions every day. Keanu seems to understand that better than most celebrities do. He doesn't sell fake positivity. He doesn't pretend pain magically transforms into happiness overnight. Instead, his life story quietly suggests something more believable. That people can carry sadness and kindness at the same time. And maybe that's the saddest truth about Keanu Reeves. Not that terrible things happened to him, but that he experienced enough loss to understand how temporary everything really is. The people we love, the moments we cherish, the happiness we assume will last forever. Keanu knows those things can disappear suddenly. You can hear it in the way he speaks sometimes. See it in the way he pauses thoughtfully before answering emotional questions. Feel it in the calm loneliness behind certain smiles. But instead of becoming cold because of that knowledge, he seems to value human connection even more deeply. Maybe that's why fans feel protective of him, because in a world full of performance, Keanu Reeves reminds people of something real. Not perfection, not fantasy, just humanity. If Keanu Reeves' story touched you even a little, then maybe his greatest lesson is this: no matter how much pain life brings, kindness still matters. Through heartbreak, loss, loneliness, and years of silent struggles, he never let the world turn him cold. And honestly, that's rarer than fame itself. So if you respect Keanu not just as an actor, but as a human being who stayed humble through everything, then leave a comment with your favorite Keanu Reeves moment or movie. And if you enjoyed this story, don't forget to like and subscribe for more real stories about the people the world thinks it already knows.